I'm 27, and I'm a woman who thought she had everything figured out. I had the dress. I had the venue. I had the dream wedding planned down to the tiniest detail. But what I didn't have? A family who supported me. You're probably thinking, oh, here we go, family drama on a wedding day. But no! What happened to me isn't something you'd expect, and even now, as I sit here writing this, I still can't believe it happened. Let's rewind a bit. I was always the black sheep of the family. The problem child. My parents, especially my dad, were incredibly controlling. Nothing was ever good enough. Not my grades. Not my career choices. And definitely not my relationships. But when I met Sam, everything changed, or so I thought. Sam was different. He wasn't the type of guy they expected me to be with. Hell, he wasn't even the type I expected myself to be with. But something about him clicked. We connected on a level that no one, not even my parents, could understand. He wasn't rich or from a good family. He wasn't what you'd call perfect, but to me, he was the one. And for once, I thought that maybe, just maybe, I had finally found something they would accept. He proposed to me on my birthday, right after a romantic dinner at the place where we first met. I said yes without hesitation. I thought this was it. This was the moment they'd finally see me as an adult, someone who could make her own choices. Big mistake. 2 days before the wedding, my parents invited Sam and me over to talk about some last-minute details. I was excited. I figured they were finally going to warm up to him, maybe even apologize for the cold reception. But as soon as we sat down at the dinner table, the mood shifted. My dad barely looked at Sam, and my mom's face was like stone. The tension was thick, suffocating. Then, my dad spoke. "You're making a huge mistake," he said, his voice low but firm. I froze. What the hell was going on? What do you mean? You're marrying him, a man who doesn't even have a stable job. He's not even good enough for you, he said, glaring at Sam like he was the enemy. I could feel my heart sinking. You're my daughter, and I'll be damned if I let you throw your life away like this, my mom chimed in, her voice quivering with anger. You're better than this. Sam's face turned red, but he stayed silent, clearly trying to keep his cool. I could see the hurt in his eyes. My parents didn't care about him, about us, about anything. The worst part? They didn't care about me either. I tried to keep calm, but the words felt like they were choking me. I love him. I'm marrying him, and nothing you say is going to change that, I snapped, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. But they didn't relent. They just kept going, piling on the insults, the judgment. And then, when I was about to lose it, my dad dropped the bomb. If you marry him, you're not welcome here anymore. You're no longer part of this family. Silence. The words hit harder than anything I'd ever experienced. My whole life, I had been afraid of disappointing them, but this was something else. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to cry, but something in me snapped. Something broke free. Maybe it was the years of pent-up frustration, or maybe it was the realization that, no matter what, they would never approve of me. They would never be proud of me. I looked at Sam, who was just as stunned as I was, and in that moment, something shifted. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their acceptance. For once, I needed to put myself first. I stood up, my knee shaking, but my voice steady. Fine, I said, locking eyes with my dad. If that's how it's going to be, then I'm done. I'll leave. But don't think you'll see me crawl back. I turned to Sam, and without another word, we left. Just like that, my family was gone. The tension in the air was suffocating as Sam and I walked out of their house, but I could feel something deep inside me stir, a mixture of fear, anger, and adrenaline. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing for sure: they had just made a massive mistake. It wasn't even the worst thing that happened that day. Don't get me wrong, being kicked out of my family home on my wedding day, in front of Sam? Yeah, that sucked. But that was just the beginning of a chain of events that would flip my life upside down. The real challenge? Trying to piece together what was left after walking out of that house. It wasn't as if I had a backup plan. Hell, I didn't even have a game plan. I had a wedding dress and a few $100 saved up, but I certainly didn't have a place to go or anyone to turn to. Sam and I didn't even have a proper honeymoon planned. We were supposed to start our life together with our family's blessings, but instead, it was just the two of us against the world. We ended up at a cheap motel that night. I remember sitting on the bed, staring at the walls, the wedding dress still in its bag, untouched. Sam was on the other side of the room, pacing. I could tell he was trying to hold it together, but it wasn't working. Neither of us said anything for a while. The air between us was heavy, thick with everything unspoken. "I don't know what to do," Sam muttered, finally breaking the silence. His voice wasn't angry, just tired. He ran a hand through his hair. I never thought they'd actually do that. I just stared at the floor. I didn't know what to say. What was there to say? That was the moment I realized I was on my own. No one else was coming to help us. We were going to have to figure this out, without anyone else's support. We didn't have much, but we did have each other, and I held on to that. I didn't have a plan, but I was sure as hell going to find one. The next few weeks were, well, they were chaotic, to say the least. I couldn't go back to my family, and Sam didn't have anyone he could turn to either. His family had always been distant, and his friends were mostly the type of people you'd meet in a bar and forget by the time morning came. So, it was just us, and that was terrifying. We found a tiny apartment, one of those places that's barely big enough for a couch and a bed. The rent was cheap, but the walls were thin, and the neighborhood, let's just say it wasn't the safest. But we didn't have any other options. It felt like we were drowning in the reality of it all. The weight of being cut off from everything I knew was heavy. It was like the world had just shifted, and there was no way to put it back. But the real struggle came when we started trying to figure out how to survive. I didn't have a career. I had worked a few part-time jobs here and there, but nothing steady, nothing that would pay the bills. Sam wasn't doing much better. He was trying to get a freelance gig here and there, but the work wasn't consistent. We were scrambling to make rent, and I could see the worry creeping into Sam's eyes every time a bill was due. He was doing his best to keep it together, but I could tell he was scared. And I was, too. I tried to help. I found a job at a local coffee shop, and it paid just enough to cover my half of the rent. Sam picked up some odd jobs, doing web design and writing copy for small businesses. But it was barely enough. We had no savings, no cushion. The only thing we had was a pile of debt and the looming pressure of surviving each day. Every time we paid a bill, I could feel the tension growing. How long would it take before we were in real trouble? One night, after another disappointing round of rejections for a job I thought I was perfect for, I broke. I sat on the floor of our tiny apartment, my head in my hands, tears streaming down my face. I hated feeling like this. I hated feeling so helpless. This wasn't the life I had imagined. I wasn't supposed to be this person, this failure. But then, Sam came in. He sat next to me and didn't say anything at first. He just put his arm around me. We didn't need words. We just needed each other, I guess. "We're going to get through this," he said, after a long silence. I wasn't sure if he believed it or if he was trying to convince himself. Either way, I appreciated the sentiment. But that's when it hit me. What if I didn't just survive this? What if I used this? I was tired of being afraid, tired of feeling like I wasn't enough. I wasn't going to let this be the end. My family had rejected me. Fine. But what if I could show them, show myself, that I was capable of building something they never expected? They thought I'd fall apart without them. They thought I needed them to succeed. Well, I wasn't going to wait around to prove them wrong. I was going to build the life they'd never thought I could have. It wasn't going to be easy. Hell, it wasn't going to be fast. But I was done being passive. Done waiting for someone to rescue me. If I was going to make this work, it had to be on my terms. I needed a plan. A real one. And that night, I started planning. I didn't know where it was going, but I was done sitting in fear. I was going to show everyone, my family, Sam, the world, that I could create a life far bigger than they ever thought I was capable of. It started slowly, as most big changes do. At first, I didn't even know where to begin. I spent hours sitting on the floor of our tiny apartment, trying to put together some semblance of a plan. What did I want? What did I need? I had no family, no safety net, and barely any money to my name, but I wasn't about to let that be my end. I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going back to the life I had before. The life where I constantly bent to their expectations, trying to fit into this perfect mold they had created for me. The life where I was always someone else's idea of what I should be. No. I wanted something real. Something that would make my family regret ever writing me off. I started small. Like, really small. I knew that if I was going to make this work, I had to use what I had. And right now, I had my phone, my laptop, and a whole lot of time. I didn't know anything about running a business or how to market myself, but I figured I could learn. I started researching online, how to build a brand, how to make money online, how to create something that could actually support me. In the evenings, Sam and I would sit together in that tiny, cramped apartment, drinking cheap wine and brainstorming. Some nights, we'd talk about dreams, the kind of life we wanted to build. Other nights, we'd just go over the basics, how we could make enough to get through the month. Sam's voice always carried this weight of uncertainty, but I could see the spark of determination in his eyes. He was with me. He believed in me. We'd laugh at the ridiculousness of it all. I'd joke that if we ever made it big, I'd throw a giant party for the people who never believed in us, especially my parents. I could see Sam's smile falter a little. It wasn't that he didn't support me, it was just that he wasn't sure if I was actually going to be able to do it. And I get it. We were both scared. But it didn't matter. I wasn't about to back down now. After a few weeks of grinding away at odd jobs and learning everything I could, I came up with an idea. It was a risky one, but then again, what did I have to lose? I had no reputation to protect, no name to uphold, nothing left to ruin. So, I took the plunge. I started a blog, a personal blog, but with a twist. I wrote about overcoming the very thing my family had always doubted me for, being myself. I wrote raw, vulnerable posts about the struggles of stepping away from toxic people, about fighting for your own happiness, about creating a future that you could call your own, no matter how ugly or imperfect it seemed at first. The words came easily, probably because they were my truth. I wasn't hiding behind any facades. It felt good. Damn good, actually. But the real turning point came when I made a decision. I'd start a YouTube channel. A lot of people were doing it, but I knew I could offer something different. I didn't want to talk about how to make it big or get rich quick. Nah, I wanted to talk about real life. The messy, unpredictable, and often painful path to building a life when everyone thinks you'll fail. At first, it was awkward. I was terrible on camera. My first video? Oh man. I looked like a deer in headlights, rambling about my goals in the most disjointed way possible. I didn't even know how to edit properly. But I kept at it. I'd film at odd hours of the day, when Sam was out working on his freelance stuff, trying to squeeze in content between the 12-hour shifts at my coffee shop job. My body was exhausted, but my mind was buzzing with possibilities. The first few weeks were brutal. I had maybe 10 views per video. Most of them were from Sam. But there was this one person who started leaving comments. I don't even know how they found me, but it was like this one person's encouragement kept me going. Every time I saw their message pop up, I'd smile like a complete idiot. Someone out there was watching. Someone cared. Then, slowly, it started to snowball. I can't even tell you what changed, whether it was the videos getting shared or if I just hit the right note with the right audience. But over time, people started finding me. And not just any people, people who related. People who felt stuck, who were dealing with their own family pressures, their own toxic situations, who wanted to find a way out. I was getting messages, DMs, comments. They were telling me how much my words resonated with them, how they felt less alone. It was like a light bulb went off. Maybe I didn't need my family to believe in me. Maybe I didn't need their approval at all. I had this whole new community of people who got it. And in some crazy, twisted way, I realized I was doing exactly what my parents had always feared. I was building a life without them, a life they couldn't control, a life they couldn't shape to their standards. And it felt amazing. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. I still had days where everything felt impossible. I still had moments when I'd stare at the bills piling up, wondering if I was really cut out for this. Sam, too, he was working non-stop, and sometimes, I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. We both had our doubts, and there were nights when the pressure would feel like it was crushing us. But we kept going. We didn't give up. And then, just when I thought we might be getting somewhere, my phone buzzed late one night. It was from an unknown number. I wasn't ready for what came next. I stared at the phone in my hand, not quite understanding what I was seeing. My thumb hovered over the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize, but the words? Well, they stopped me in my tracks. We've been following your journey for a while. We think you've got what it takes. Would you be interested in a partnership? For a split second, I thought maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was spam or some weird scam. But then I saw the company name at the bottom of the message. It was a brand I had followed, admired, and hoped to one day work with. They were one of the biggest influencers in the self-help and personal development space, people I'd looked up to for years. And they wanted me? I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at that screen, my mind racing. My thoughts were a mess. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. No, this was the moment I needed. This was the validation I never thought I'd get, not from my family, but from the world. Sam came in just as I was sitting there, completely frozen. He looked at me, his eyes scanning my face, and then down at the phone. Is that real? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I could barely even breathe as I passed the phone to him. He read the message in silence, his brows furrowing. When he looked up at me, his expression was a mix of disbelief and pure excitement. Holy shit, he muttered. This is it. This is your chance. And that's when it hit me. It wasn't just a chance to work with a brand I respected. It was a chance to prove to everyone, my family, my past, myself, that I could do this. That I didn't need anyone else's approval to succeed. I'd built something real, something people were taking notice of. I was getting somewhere. But, of course, nothing comes easy. That partnership? It wasn't just about making some videos or writing a few blog posts. No, They wanted me to take everything to the next level. They wanted me to push boundaries. They wanted me to get more personal, to share my real story with the world, the stuff I had kept locked up inside for years. The parts of me that I didn't even know if I was ready to share yet. The pain, the doubts, the struggle of walking away from everything I knew. I was terrified. I wanted it. God, I wanted it so badly. But opening up like that? It felt raw. Exposing. Could I really do it? Could I really show the world everything, especially the darkest parts of my journey? But then I thought about it. I thought about the nights Sam and I spent in that crummy apartment, the way I had to keep digging when it felt like we were sinking, the small victories that came with every new subscriber, every kind word from a stranger. I thought about how my family had written me off, and how it hurt. But I also realized how much stronger it had made me. How much more determined I had become. And that's when I knew this was my moment. The next week, I flew out to meet with the team. I couldn't believe it was actually happening. I was shaking with nervous energy the whole time, my mind a whirlwind of excitement and doubt. But when I walked into their office and saw the people I'd been admiring from afar, something inside me clicked. I wasn't some random girl off the streets. I had a story. I had built something from nothing, and damn it, they were going to see that. We spent hours talking, strategizing, planning the next steps. It was intense, overwhelming even, but it was also exhilarating. I was finally living the life I had dreamed of, but in a way I hadn't expected. I was no longer the girl who needed validation from her parents. I was the woman who had built something on her own, and now I was being recognized for it. As the meeting came to an end, they handed me a contract. A real contract, with a real partnership. I glanced at it, my hands shaking, and then I looked up at the team. I could hardly believe it. This wasn't a dream. It wasn't some fleeting moment. This was happening. "I'll sign," I said, my voice steady, despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. "But I want to do more. I want to make this something big. I want to change lives. I want to show people that it's okay to fail, that it's okay to fall flat on your face and get back up. But you have to get up." They smiled. "We're with you, every step of the way." And just like that, everything shifted. The girl who had been kicked out on her wedding day, the girl who had nothing but doubts and fear holding her back, was now sitting at the table with people who saw her for who she really was. Not some failure. Not some broken person. But a woman who had the courage to stand up, walk away, and build a life from scratch. When I got back to the apartment that night, Sam was waiting for me. I told him everything, the contract, the plans, the future we could build together. I watched his face light up, his eyes glistening with pride. He was with me, through all the chaos and uncertainty. And he always would be. We didn't have it all figured out. But for the first time in a long time, I believed we would. Looking back now, it almost feels like everything that happened was meant to be. I mean, I never expected to end up here, this version of me, the one who built something from scratch and found success. But if I'm being real, I'm grateful. Grateful for the pain, for the rejection, for all the nights I spent crying, questioning, and doubting myself. It was the fire I needed to fuel me forward. I never would have guessed that getting kicked out of my family home on my wedding day would be the thing that would set me free. It felt like the end of the world at the time, like everything I had worked for, all the dreams I had, were just gone. But what I didn't realize back then was that the world was giving me an opportunity. An opportunity to create something that was mine, something that didn't have to be validated by anyone but myself. When I started building my online presence, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to edit videos, how to promote my content, or even if anyone would care about my story. But little by little, it came together. slowly, like a jigsaw puzzle, all the pieces started falling into place. And the best part? I didn't need to ask anyone for permission. I didn't need approval or validation from my family or anyone else. I was doing this for me. For the version of myself I had kept hidden for so long. As time went on, I grew more confident. I pushed myself to be more vulnerable, more honest. I shared the parts of me I had kept locked away for years, the fear, the failure, the pain, and the growth. And you know what? People connected. They understood me. And I realized I wasn't alone in this journey. There were so many others out there, struggling with their own challenges, their own family dynamics, their own self-doubt. The more I shared, the more I received in return. It wasn't just views or likes, it was real connection. I was finally being seen for who I really was. But even then, there were moments when the weight of it all felt too heavy. The pressure of having to keep up, the fear of failure, and yes, the thought of what my family might say. I'd be lying if I said I didn't still care about that. It was hard to let go of the dream that one day they'd accept me, that they'd see the person I had become. But I had to let that dream go. I had to realize that their approval wasn't the key to my happiness. I was the key. The turning point came when I hit a milestone, one I had been dreaming about for months. My blog and YouTube channel started gaining real traction. I was getting collaborations, my videos were being shared, and I was starting to make a steady income from it all. It was everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed. But it wasn't just about the money or the recognition. It was about freedom. I had built something that was truly mine, something that no one could take away. And you know what? I got that call. The one I had been waiting for. It was my mom. I didn't recognize the number at first, but when I picked up, I heard her voice. "Hey," she said, and there was this nervous edge to her tone that I hadn't heard in a while. "I've been thinking about everything. About what happened." I could feel my heart racing. Part of me wanted to hang up, to tell her I wasn't ready to hear it. But another part of me, the part that had grown over the past year, knew that I needed to listen. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "We were wrong. I should have supported you. I know we've hurt you. And I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try." It was quiet for a moment. The weight of her words hung in the air. I had so many emotions bubbling up inside me, but for the first time in a long time, I felt calm. I didn't need her apology, but hearing it made me realize how far I had come. "I'm doing okay, Mom," I said softly. "More than okay, actually. I'm building something. Something I'm proud of. And I'm happy. I don't need you to fix anything. I've already done that myself." The line went quiet, and I could hear her sniffling, trying to hold back tears. But I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. I was just at peace. I had spent so long hoping for their approval, wishing they'd see me differently, but now I understood. I didn't need them to understand me anymore. I was finally comfortable in my own skin, finally free. Over the next few months, things shifted. I didn't rush to forgive them or even try to fix everything. I knew my relationship with them would take time. But I was no longer waiting for their acceptance to feel worthy. I had created my own worth. I had made a life that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. And that was more powerful than anything I could have imagined. Looking at the life I have now, at Sam by my side, the business we've built together, the people I've connected with, it's hard to believe that all of this started with the worst day of my life. But that's the funny thing about life, isn't it? The worst days sometimes lead to the best things. If I hadn't been kicked out, I wouldn't have had the courage to walk away and build a future that was truly mine. I wouldn't have found my voice, or my purpose, or the life I have now. And as for my family? Well, I don't need them to validate my worth anymore. I've learned to validate myself. And that, in itself, has been the greatest victory of all.